Don't have a feed. Hi, and welcome to Steel Talk. My name is Danny Stain, and I work in the steel fabricating space. And in this show, I reach out to industry insiders and I try and get a handle on how people are navigating this rapidly changing landscape. I think we're all struggling with this new reality and the stress that is imposing on us, our businesses, on our lives personally, even our emotional stability. So I'm hoping to connect with others just like you, dealing with these very same issues, and find out how they're responding and what procedures they are implementing and where they see this going. Hopefully, in this process, we'll reveal some creative steps that others are taking to minimize their disruptions or possibly even pivot and use creative ideas and solutions to capitalize on opportunities that may be presenting themselves during these unusual times. If you have any questions for our guest, please type them in the comment section and I'll try my best to get to them. And I'm hoping that we'll all find value in these discussions. So without further delay, I'd like to welcome my next guest, Matt Tucker, president of Afton Fabricating and Welding, based in Sauget, Illinois. Hey, Matt, how are you?
Hey, Danny, how are you?
Really good, thanks. And I really appreciate you coming on our show.
Yeah, it'll be a good time.
Well, Matt, you and I have been good friends now for quite some time. I think we met way back in 2001 when you were looking at upgrading your facility.
We did. You sold us our very first bicep machine long ago, long
Those,
ago,
those are back in the days, yeah. Matt, you've
and,
always
and
struck
and a
me.
few pieces of equipment since then.
Well, thank you for your business. We really appreciate it. But Matt, you've always struck me as one of the most well-informed and grounded fabricators of all the people that I meet. And you always seem to have your finger on the pulse. And I've seen your business grow leaps and bounds over the years. And you've always executed methodically, step by step. So let's get to the most important question. Are you guys still fabricating today?
As of right now, we are, yes. We have a healthy backlog um, currently, but that work was booked last year.
Are,
You go ahead.
are you at full strength? Have you cut back your hours?
We've stopped overtime because of job site conditions. We've had a very wet winter. Um, we've seen a few job sites have some COVID-19 delays, but largely it's not impacting our current. I have a I have quite concern over future projects, but the backlog that we have is stuff that we booked last year largely.
Okay. And on your work floor, on your fabricating floor, what sort of procedures have you put in place to mitigate the spread of coronavirus?
So we've split our fabrication team personnel into two shifts. Normally we would work 5 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. We're working one shift, half of our guys 5 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. and then the other half 1:30 to 10 p.m. To kind of mitigate larger groups of people in our facility. We've also cut the number of people in our shop that can go into the bathroom at the same time, or are in a foreman's office, or mandated. All of the things that CDC is recommending, we're implementing and
And ha
trying to be implement them is with the least amount of difficulties in the shop,
okay. And
intrusion, I guess.
has there been any pushback from people on the floor? Has everybody been quite accepting and understanding of the changes?
Yeah, I think everybody has been. I mean, we're all scared of the unknown, and so they want don't want to get sick any worse than I don't want we don't want them sick. So,
Sure. And what about receiving? Obviously, if you're still fabricating, you've got to have supplies arriving on a daily basis. You've got steel, you've got consumables, you've got trucks coming in and out. How are you handling those sort of, let's call it, intrusions into a workspace?
well, as you know, we're very loyal with our suppliers, so we don't we value relationship more than pricing. So it's not like we have 10 different suppliers coming into our facility at any one time. We're leaning on those relationships a little bit to schedule trucking when it works best for us. And then we're also we've noticed that our suppliers aren't that their truck drivers will get out and unstrap a load, but they're back in the truck. They're not hanging around having lunch with our guys like they used to. The interaction between deliveries and our staff is rather minimal.
Yeah, I'll have to say, even here in our offices for the skeleton staff that we have, if we have deliveries, it all gets left outside. We all put on our protective gear, go and bring it in, decontaminate before we open. We're just trying to take every preventative measure possible.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you're not letting salesmen knock on your door or any of us pesky guys.
No, 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 nope. And for the most part, they haven't been. But we have some stuff posted at the office and whatnot now as well.
Yeah. So you started to say, I think you used a phrase when you and I were chatting before. You were talking about a train coming down the tracks. We've with this, you've got a monster backload of work. At one point, I think that you had more than a year's worth of work ahead of you. Is that train still barreling down flat out, or do you see it slowing at all? What's in your
Oh no,
immediate
it's
future?
it's in my opinion, push a book off a desk, and that's the end of the track. Um,
Okay.
we're working through our backlog, and we're seeing projects that we're bidding this month or this week pushed out 2 months because everyone's unsure. So preparing for um, essentially
Yep.
because we don't know.
Yeah, I think, and I think that's the point that we're all in. We're all struggling. I was chatting to my accountant today to try and understand what opportunities exist for us under this new stimulus package that's been released. And he's saying, well, I can tell you what I know today, but from what I understand, it might be changed tomorrow. And it seems like we're all struggling we're working at this frantic pace just to try and grasp how the ground underneath us is shifting as we're standing on it.
Yeah, I worked in the office and went home and spent about 5 hours reading email after email on COVID-19 and what to do. Emailed Tom, one of my partners, that I'm more confused last night than I was than I was before it started. I mean, it's changing constantly.
Now, Illinois is under a sort of semi-lockdown with essential services continuing, or what is the situation in your state?
Yeah, so Friday before last, Governor Pritzker announced a closure, a shutdown in the state of Illinois. To most businesses, but it's quite frankly a soft closure. If you're a shop, you're not working, but we deal with construction. We have a lot of hospitals, medical buildings being built, so that's where we're working on, and we're deemed essential. But at 3:30 that Friday, we had no idea what was going on. We had learned that Pritzker was going to shut down the state, and we weren't sure to what level. So at 3:30 that Friday, we gathered all our employees up, met outside, so we were all kind of apart from each other, and told them that we were going to work Saturday because at that time the shutdown was effective on Sunday. So I want everybody to come in Saturday. We're going to get as much done as we can, and hopefully by then we'll have read the written order that dictated who could operate and who couldn't. And fortunately, Saturday rolled around and it was posted, and we were one of the essential industries. So we were able to work within reason. It's
Okay.
certainly not business as normal, but we're trying to make it business as normal. We've sent what office staff we do have. Support staff is working from, and again splitting our work our shop into two groups to keep it as much as possible.
Yeah, and I know working from home, it's quite trying. I know everybody in the world is trying to find a supply of webcams and anything that allows you to log in remotely. I think you and I have both been waiting for a shipment for 2 weeks, and we just both got notification it's coming 2 weeks further. So waiting for a month when you're so used to getting an Amazon drop the following day. I think some people are obviously benefiting in this unusual time, but I really wish that every one of our employees had access to a webcam right now because this technology we have available, we've always had it, but we've just never learned how to use it or even needed it.
I don't think we've ever been forced to use it, so it's going to, in my opinion, it's going to change the way that we're working in the future, and it'll change quite frankly the construction building industry, as you and I have chatted before. If you're a business owner in a service oriented or a knowledge in the knowledge industry, and you were in an office building, now you have your entire workforce working from home, and hopefully for you, they're what they're supposed to be accomplishing. Um, what if now you look at it and go, I don't need that overhead of a building. I don't need that all that expense. I can have all my staff work and cut some bottom line off of costs, or cost off the bottom line.
Yeah, that's not going to be a very popular viewpoint. Certainly, I think amongst fabricators right now, you're possibly a lone voice with that. I, I, th- I think that I think there is some reality creeping in, is that if we do become effective working remotely, certainly some of these things that we were used to in the past are no longer relevant. We've seen what Amazon has done to retail space. We're going to find, regular malls have been under incredible financial pressure for some time. We've seen the collapse of Macy's and a bunch of other different sort of brick and mortar companies, the old Barnes and Noble, and all of these sort of have all struggled and failed. We've seen how online works. Well, sure, we need distribution for those products. So there's definitely a square footage from a distribution warehousing requirement. But some of the stuff that we're used to, strip malls and all of these sort of things, if we're able to provide that service remotely, well, maybe we don't need it. And that possibly has an interesting dynamic for us in the square footage business.
Well, I think it does that, but on the flip side, honestly, I've never wanted to go to a Mexican restaurant so bad. So um, it's interesting that the sales calls or the calls that you would blow off in the past because you took them for granted,
Yeah.
um, you can't do that now, and those are the things that, so will you see a resurgence of those type of industries or outlets in the future?
Oh, well, we
I don't
jump.
know.
None of us do. I mean, we're all speculating. I mean, let's face it. There could be a cure, that gets released tomorrow, and that would change the dynamic instantly. I have a see that CDC is still talking that if this current cure continues, they're expecting 12 to 18 months. So unless there's some major change in there, I don't see it happening anytime soon. But let's come back to the current day right now. Are there any issues in terms of the supply chain? Is your steel arriving on time? Do you have access to all the profile sizes that you need? Are there any challenges that you're facing in that respect?
We have no issues getting any steel from suppliers. We've been assured that the mills are still going to produce, our suppliers are still going to ship um, today. Obviously, uh, politics could change that. But right now, no issues getting steel, welding wire, gases, or
And do you detail in-house or do you use an outside detailing service?
so all of our detailers are outside detailers, and fortunately they're somewhat local and are all working from their house
Okay,
anyway, long before this.
right. Okay, cool. Um, what about downstream? What about transportation? We've seen some states closing state lines, and so one would anticipate significant delays getting to job sites or having steel coming in or traveling across. Are you seeing any of that?
We're not seeing it currently, but one of the bigger concerns my partners and I are talking about is um, Governor Pritzker likes to have Chicago follow New York City and what they're doing. So we have concern um, that we might follow a New York City style or Pennsylvania style shutdown. And in which case, what does that do to transportation? And what does that do, because we operate in many states? What does that do to you know states that we have current projects going on?
Yep. And I'm sure you're watching that, and that's changing day by day. Are there any
Absolutely.
particular are there any particular websites that you use to track transportation, or how are you getting your information to tell your guy to take a different route if he can't pass through a state, or how are you staying on top of those challenges?
Again, it's we're really leaning on our vendor relationships. So we use a specific hauling company for all of our hauling. We do local hauling ourselves, so we're in constant contact. Once to twice a day, just to get updates on any issues as we need them.
Yeah, this thing is it it's becoming an issue for all of us. One of my employees was wishing to drive to go and see his family in Georgia, and just before he set out, he heard from his son that there were massive delays between the state of crossing the border from Florida to Georgia, with Florida's sort of trying to contain what's happening here. I think we're sort of number 5 or number 6 in terms of the infections and growing very rapidly. And I think that we're trying to sort of either prevent us people from South Florida getting out or other people coming here to infect. Obviously, we had a lot of New Yorkers traveling down here in the past, and that's maybe one of the sources. Who knows? I was chatting with Megan in service at Pettinghouse, and they've got a challenge. They were trying to send somebody through from they just couldn't get somebody to even travel through Louisiana. This is not a shipment, but all the borders surrounding Louisiana are pretty much locked down. And because they haven't been able to contain what they're doing, they're possibly not doing the right things. Some of the states are sort of taking fairly draconian measures on who can come through that border, that state border.
Yeah, one of the things that we did for our employees after the shutdown was created placards for their cars that they could carry with them to make sure that, hey, they're essential, because we had fear that they were going to shut the bridges down between Missouri and Illinois. They haven't yet. Hopefully they do not, but this would deem them essential and allow them to state lines. And
Yeah.
we got that information from our local emergency management system at the county
Okay.
level.
Yeah, this is really interesting times. I think we're all struggle to look ahead because the picture ahead is just so murky, and it's changing literally every moment. I've been watching the stock market with uh, it's just like a pogo stick. 1 minute it's bouncing up. You look
It
at the
depends on what day it's either, oh, it's a roller coaster. I mean,
yeah, yep. I don't know if
it's
you
a roller coaster to think that. Go ahead.
well, I'm sure you saw that. There were President Trump mentioned that there was potential discussions going on between Saudi Arabia and Russia, and the oil price just bounced again today. So that took the market up again after, and then it looks like it's sort of cooled again. And I just, not that the market is important, but the market has such a great deal of influence on confidence of business people, developers, suppliers. we all watch that, whether we got money in the market or not.
Sure.
It plays a massive part in people's daily emotional stability.
I paid $1.58 a gallon for gas yesterday.
Oh my
So
gosh!
I
Wow.
had to text one of my partners. I couldn't believe it. I almost took a photo of it. It was crazy. But to think that this year we've seen an all-time stock market high, the biggest point drop percentage, one of the biggest percentage drops ever, all within, quite
For,
frankly, the last 45 days
yeah.
is nuts.
And from the
In my
lowest
opinion, it's go ahead.
from the lowest unemployment rate to the fastest rate of unemployment in our history. Yeah, these extremes are just, it's like falling off the edge of a cliff. And then we seem to rebound again. And then,
The concern that I have is the corporations come out with their earnings after this is settled, and the stock market is going to uh, fall, go up, go down, because there's need to be made in the market. But when earnings reports start coming out, and you hit on the unemployment, that's the biggest, to me, the white elephant in the room is, the reason that a lot of, in my opinion, the reason that a lot of these loans and programs is to keep individuals. They're trying to skew those numbers, and by putting money into their hands directly and not technically claiming them on unemployment. And but you have the president of uh, the St. Louis Fed Bank predicting 32% unemployment, even if he's half wrong, and it's 15%. We were at 3.5%, and at the end of February, that's crazy. We're not ready for that.
no, no, we're certainly not. But I think the very big difference between this and 2008 is 2008, the virus, let's call it the subprime mortgages and the credit default swaps, all of that was systemic. It was within the banking system. And so that had to be excised from the banking system before everything started to turn around. This is very different. This is exogenous. We know it's a virus, it's outside, we know what it is. And the minute we can get it out of our system, which theoretically appears to be quite a simple thing, either just go into quarantine for 4 to 6 weeks, and we should be fine if we can get everybody to do it, or we've come up with some kind of cure or something like that. But even if we do go through some significant um, illnesses and even mortality, um, the turnaround should be relatively quick. That would be my expectation. Or do you see it differently?
I see it completely differently. I think uh, we've rushed a huge economic stimulus package through, um, the repercussions of which none of us know. In addition, money that maybe they wouldn't have lended when times were good. So while I agree that the cause uh, is different, are we creating the same? Are we starting to create the same sort of financial bubble that we did in 08, 09?
Yeah, I'm afraid that's so way over my pay grade. I have to reach out to experts that can help me
I'm just
understand.
a dumb steel fabricator. So
um, yeah, that's it. Look, you've got, I wouldn't even call this pessimistic. I've always considered you a real optimist, and maybe more of a realist. In fact, um, I've got an incredibly clear or vivid memory that dates back to April of 2007. We were at the NASCC show in New Orleans, um, and we were exhibiting our products as everybody else was doing. And back in 2007, this was just in the middle of those heady days where you'd walk outside, there'd be money outside your door, you would just sweep it in. The stock market was heading up for record highs, fabricators were slammed, everybody was doubling, making, people were doubling their prices on their
Right.
property. It was a fantastic time. And you and your business partner, Charlie Fail, walked into the show and you said you were there, like everybody else, to capitalize. And you spent quite some time walking around the show, a few days there. And I was really very surprised that you were incredibly modest in your acquisitions. Most people were so bullish, capitalizing, in my opinion, well above what was sustainable capacity, but you guys were very modest. And I remember our conversations, and there was a sort of a fear that this was too good to be true and it wasn't sustainable. Do you remember that conversation?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You told us to go look at a multi-spindle
Yeah. Well,
because
you had grown so well, I'd
where
say.
we were growing,
Yeah.
exactly, and we were. But the reality is, we're in a finite market, and luckily, we uh, we chose to believe it wasn't sustainable. We had some other stuff internally going on with some partners and whatnot, but if anything, that experience and the Great Recession, I guess as we'll call it, has caused myself and any other business owner that has went through it, you as well, to continually look over your shoulder. Um, the fact is, the it was a grip coaster. The downturn sucked. The recovery was awesome. Um, but but here we are, in my mind, standing in the same spot. Going, okay, there's still money to be made. There's still, jobs are still good. Uh, there's still projects out there to bid, but that growth rate that we have seen, um, we don't feel is there for the relative short term future. Um, that's how we're choosing to look at
Yeah, and
it. But and
coming back
Go ahead.
to those days, I've always considered you an optimist, and more of, but with a tending towards a realist. I've never seen you as a pessimist. Um, I've always seen you
You are
find.
now.
No, I don't believe that for a second. I don't think you've changed your character one little bit. Yeah, I think that you might have a viewpoint that's a little bit out of kilter with um, a lot of people, but you also you described kind of the mentality in the marketplace right now as a bit of a poker game. Um, People are nervous to reveal what they have for fear of appearing weak or not being real about it. Maybe you could sort of expand on that a little bit.
Well, I mean, you never want to tell anyone how many months work you have. You walk into a local fabricators association meeting, and it's the biggest poker game of the week because everybody's telling you they're busy. Oh, got lots of work on the books. And I'm curious, when we get through all the social distancing, is it going to be a pity party, or is it going to be a real conversation about those things? And with some of the competitors, you always have good competitors that you can for solid information, but the it's just, it'll be different.
All right. Um, no doubt it's going to be different. So if you saw this coming, if you could see this scenario happening, a very rapid downturn and possibly a contraction of work, is there anything that you would have done differently in the last 12 to 24 months in terms of setting up your business, in terms of efficiencies, capital acquisitions, moving to different operating systems or software? Are there any things that you would have done differently with some foreknowledge of this, or are you did everything you could have at this time?
No, I mean, you know how we operate, and we operate very lean,
Very,
and
very.
so to us, this is just another bump in the road. How long is it going to be a bump? Man, none of us know. Have we slowed any capital acquisitions? Absolutely, until we have some clarity on some things. That doesn't mean that they're completely out of the picture. I mean, we're looking at ways to increase efficiencies out in the shop more than ever because it's important. It's way more important now than it's been. But for instance, we're looking at a barcoding system finally to track some stuff. So I mean, it's not stopped um, our thought process. We still operate the same as because it's just a bump in the road. If we were doing things wrong, you, you don't change drastically with drastic market conditions. Steady is the course.
Yeah, and sort of fine tune things that have worked for you in the past. No major
Absolutely.
departures. Yeah, some fine tuning. Um, all right, so let's let's look at this going, another month of lockdown or 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I'm just going to be optimistic that it's something fairly short term. Are you personally actually working from home? Are you alternating with your business partners? How are you sort of sharing the load?
I was driving to the office at about 3:15 this morning. So we're splitting we're splitting the shifts up. So one of us is always here when at 5 in the morning when the 5 to 1:30 shift works, and then one of us is here from 1:30 to 10, and then the other one is kind of a normal day. So we split those up because there's certain things that the business still has to operate. So there's certain things that we have to do during the day, and each of us are set up to work from home. So yesterday I was here at 5, about in the office until 3:30. Went home and work from about 4:30 to 8, and
Okay.
back up at it again today. So we're taking turns and sharing the load. I mean, it's an opportune time to set culture in your shop. Our employees that were with us during the downturn were they they saw that it instilled confidence in us, confidence in the company, and we have some newer guys in the shop that didn't go through that, so they don't know
Any different? Yeah.
how that was.
Yeah. Your wife's name is Karen, is that correct?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. How's she handling all of this?
She is. She's doing all right. She's a copy editor, so she's part of that knowledge economy. So her life hasn't changed dramatically, other than my hours have changed. I'm instead of at a bar until 10 o'clock, I'm at the office until 10 o'clock.
And you're still married?
Still married. Still married. Got remarried by Elvis 3 years ago out in Vegas for 20 years.
Oh, that's congratulations. Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember when you guys were down here in Florida and we really enjoyed your company.
yeah, it
I
was
know
a good time.
I'm really fortunate. My nephew, who is who's doing mechatronic engineering at Harvard, got sent home when they shut down the college. And so he's moved in with us. So instead of Kim and I fighting each other, we just take out all of our frustrations on poor old Jason, and he's really ruining the day, but he can't go anywhere else. So he's just the butt of all of our misery and frustration with each other. And we just smile at each
Yeah,
other every day.
my youngest daughter is a senior in high school, and so she's missing out on all of the
Oh,
senior
yeah,
activities that would happen. Quite frankly, she's not sure if she's going to have a graduation or what that looks like. So it's uncomfortable for all of us.
yeah,
This is something that is a society we haven't been through, and quite frankly, everybody's going through it together.
yeah.
It's one
It's
thing if it was just one going through it, but we're all getting through it together.
and I'm sure you're not sleeping well at night, and as soon as you wake up, you got a million things in your head and you can't get back to sleep. How do I know that? Because if you look at most of my emails, they go out somewhere between 3:30 and 4:30 a.m. in the morning. Once you get the stuff in your head and you try and figure out what the next move is, it's impossible to get back to sleep. Yeah. Are you staying fit and healthy? Are you exercising?
I was doing really good until the last week in the shutdown. So but trying to get back onto a schedule and and um, and and get through that. That's once we adapt to all these changes, which will probably take another week. That's the goal is to get a set schedule for everyone and just live with it. Because in our mind, we're prepared to go through this well as long as it takes. But realistically, with a shutdown, we're thinking that it'll be through May in
Yeah.
Illinois. So um, we'll make it work.
Yeah. Somebody sent me an email who said, hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And I think that's
Absolutely.
what we're both doing. We're trying to put systems in place. We're reaching out to friends and colleagues that maybe have some good ideas. Have you spent any time looking through the CARE Act, the stimulus package, and how it applies to you, your company, to your employees?
Um, I attended a seminar yesterday on that, and are still kind of looking at it. It'll be interesting to see uh, who takes advantage of it, who uses it for its use, and whatnot. Yesterday was also a seminar about the SBA loans. There's just a vast amount of information out there for us to research, read about, and learn about, and become experts within the day.
Well, that's the issue. My understanding is that the act is 980 pages, and that's just the first act. So we can expect, if you wouldn't mind giving me a synopsis tomorrow, so you can tell me what to do for ocean machinery. Um, but
That's
I think
exactly right.
I think you'll be happy to hear that I'm actually going to bring on an accountant who's just going to give us an overview. He'll be one of my guests next week. From the sense of urgency of understanding how to take advantage of some of um, these these things that are created for us to try and get us through these difficult times. I think by sharing what's out there, we might be able to help some fabricators and people in this fabricating space.
Well, I was talking to a banker friend of mine, and the economy was so well that man, he wasn't lending money yet. It just things were slow, and he just became the one of the most popular guys in St. Louis because of the SBA loans. I mean, I every business in St. Louis will be applying. Every business in the country will be applying for the payroll forgiveness or payroll protection policy.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest issue facing the government right now is how to execute on this because it's just staggering the infrastructure that you need to have in place to make all of this stuff work. Um, I was just sort of planning for this on my own personal level with my small business here, my hunter and my business partner. We're a small company. We're trying to figure out what to do. So I thought, well, let's be safe. Let's go and get a home equity line of credit. Let's do that, expecting that within a week or two I should have some access to some reserve funds in case I needed it. Well, right now I've just been advised that I can expect 12 to 16 weeks before I will get approval. Um, and I'm one of the bank's better customers, I would imagine. But can you imagine for people that have less than us that are in those situations, the difficulty that they're facing right now in third world countries? So no matter how bad you and I think we have it, there are people that are really struggling on a daily basis, and we're very fortunate to be in the place that we're at.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's it's just a bump in the road for us. We'll come out the other side, and it'll be all right.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. I always value our time. I consider you a good friend, and whenever I need to learn something about the fabricating industry, if I want to speak to somebody who's got a finger on the pulse, you're the first guy I call. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Next time we'll do it over a beer.
That sounds better. So please stay safe. Say hi to Karen. You guys stay fit and healthy, and we'll chat to you soon.
Yep. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it. And thanks to all of our viewers. If you want to reach out to Matt, I'm sure he's got lots of time on his hands to answer your emails. But Greg, if you wouldn't mind, Greg's my producer there. He's just pulling up Matt's email, which I'm sure he's going to hate. But if you need some good information, Matt's your guy. He is a sound man with his finger on the pulse, and he's got some interesting perspectives. Matt, thank you so much, and we'll speak to you soon. And thank you to all of our viewers for watching Steel Talk, and we'll speak to you next week. Thanks and goodbye.